They dropped a cabin on my meadow and waved like they'd brought sunshine, like I should thank them for improving the view. I remember turning off the dirt road, slamming the brakes so hard dust swallowed my truck, thinking, that can't be right. It was a prefab box the color of oatmeal, squatting where my fire pit used to sit, cutting the horizon like a scar across the sky. My name's Elias Kerr, and that stretch of grass has been mine for 11 quiet years. My retreat from deadlines, from endless chatter, the sort of place where you rinse the city from your lungs, not stage someone's weekend experiment. I know the bend of every fence post, the grooves on the old picnic table. I bought it fair and final, signatures, stamps, all tucked in a manila folder I keep under the seat like gospel. So when Darlene Crow, Gold Watch, Gold Words, stepped out of that cabin with a cup of tea and told me she had approval, something in me tightened the way a rope does before it snaps. Approval from where? I asked. She smiled like I'd interrupted her personal broadcast. The township board, she said, in that tone people use when they think bureaucracy is a birthright. There were others behind her. A man with the posture of a spreadsheet and another with a smirk built from habit. They didn't look like neighbors. They looked like witnesses waiting for a confession. I tried reason first, the kind my mother said always works if your hands stay open. Speak clear, show the title, stay civil. Darlene crossed her arms, serene as granite. Temporary, she said. It's for a wellness pilot. Her eyes were calendars of justification. I remembered my grandfather's voice saying, land's not just dirt. It's your story written in acres. But people like Darlene don't read stories. They edit them. They twist meaning until it folds their way. That was Act 1. The shock came first. Then that crawling burn under the skin that insists you do something. I went home, pulled the envelope from the cabinet, and drove to the district office expecting polite confusion. Maybe a quick fix. Expectation and reality, though, rarely share the same address. The place smelled of citrus cleaner and policy. Marjorie Dane, the zoning chair, wore confidence like perfume. She told me the cabin fell under temporary civic use, a phrase that felt colder than concrete. I laid my deed across her desk and watched her pupils flicker, then drift elsewhere. There's a pilot ordinance, she said. Like words could erase lumber. That's when I shifted into Act 2, the countermeasure. I called Officer Tilden, steady voice, steady pulse, a friend of my late uncle. Then Jonah Pike, my attorney, who speaks like a coach before the big game. Practical, no nonsense. The station said they'd intervene if a violation was clear. Jonah said documentation is armor. Polish it and people hesitate to strike. We drafted a certified notice. Took pictures of the survey pegs, the fence line, every inch that says ownership isn't suggestion. I started recording too, not for spectacle, but for proof because silence behind a lens can roar later. Driving back, the whole thing felt staged by fate. One of those films where the strings rise and someone's about to bleed pride. Darlene had company now, and she came out with that same cup, same grin, like she'd practiced the script. You can't just erase my project, she said, smug as someone who's rewritten the rule book in her head. I gave her the notice. She skimmed, chuckled. Paper's thin armor. Elias, try something real next. Time. The man with the smirk muttered a comment that hovered close to menace. I wanted calm, not chaos. The law, not theater. Then Nate the hauler rolled up, ball cap and grease-lined hands, a man who understands both weight and stubbornness. He eyed the cabin like a riddle he'd already solved. Need a sign-off first, he said, straight protocol. That's when Darlene raised her volume, crying harassment, calling me a bully, flipping truth into performance. Her outrage had rhythm, rehearsed and righteous. A small crowd formed, phones lifted, breathless for drama. And there I was again, standing in the loop, watching the scene replay with different actors, same lesson waiting to land. Cherish this land. Guard this land. Don't scorch it in anger. Officer Tilden showed up, calm and precise. He read the statement, walked the boundary stakes, and his silence became its own ruling. This is unlawful occupation, he said. No swagger, no show, just the kind of truth that straightens a man's spine. Darlene flushed red, arguing about compromise, but there's a difference between discussion and denial. The haul began, a slow, metallic sigh as chains tightened and gears hummed. The cabin crept off the grass, and for one guilty breath, I felt like I was uprooting someone's dream, but it wasn't a dream on my soil. It was intrusion parked on my sunrise. After that, the district office fired back with letters heavy on disappointment, a public forum full of pointed words, and a flood of messages from strangers who suddenly had opinions about my character. Marjorie sent a formal apology that read like it had been proofread by a thesaurus. I filed a civil complaint, because sometimes institutions don't learn empathy, only expense. The courtroom was narrow, the air humming with fluorescent fatigue. The judge, weary-eyed but sharp, listened while Darlene played her part. Hardship, health, tears on cue. Some performances earned sympathy but not weight. Jonah laid down the deed and the evidence clear as daylight. The judge studied it the way a craftsman checks the level. No flair. Just balance. Justice here wasn't cinematic. It was methodical. The ruling came plain. Repayment for the tow, a penalty for unauthorized occupancy, and a directive for the board to rewrite their temporary use clause. No headlines, no applause. Just the sound of boundary being respected again. For me, victory tasted like the lake at dawn, still forgiving. Coffee on the porch rail, dog circling the grass like he'd built it himself. But stories love to linger where peace begins. Act 3 should have ended there, but life edits its own script. A week later came the hum of disturbance. A text at midnight, a folded flyer tucked under my windshield, and an email from Marjorie that sounded less like apology and more like insurance. Neighborhood balance is fragile, the letter said, with the smug calm of someone quoting wisdom they didn't earn. A neighbor I'd once trusted. A man named Louis, who used to wave from his porch, stopped returning texts. The online chatter began soon after. Some called me aggressive, others principled. The water still shimmered the same way, but faces around here shifted, subtle, like paint surrendering to weather. I sat on the porch steps at dusk and felt the weight of it all. Defending something dear doesn't make you righteous. It makes you real. And being real comes with edges. Maybe Darlene had reasons that, told early enough, could have softened into compromise. Maybe the zoning board had played politics, stretching rules to keep peace for the loudest voices. Maybe I pulled the lever too soon. All of it can be true, tangled together. That's what made the ending complicated, the gossip restless. So I posted a small wooden sign by the fence, just my name, the parcel number. Not defiance, just clarity. Boundaries need faces, even when people pretend not to see them. Soon, the local kids wandered down to skip stones. Parents followed with coolers. And for a while, the land became what it was meant to be, shared, not claimed. The township held its next meeting and passed an updated ordinance, neater on paper, but still full of loopholes you could drive a moving truck through. The crowd clapped, polite and weary, and went home to their private versions of truth. So this is where I stop, pretending there's a clean moral, and hand you the last frame. I'm lighter by one hauling invoice, heavier by a kind of knowing. Lines on maps aren't just property. They're conversations we keep having. With councils, with neighbors, with ourselves. I got my meadow back, yes, but I also learned how fast belonging fractures when ownership and ego shake hands, and how quickly rules bend toward whoever shouts first. I'm glad I stood firm, but I'm even gladder the field breathes again, the grass growing stubborn beneath the same wide sky. Tell me what you think. Did I make the right call, or would you have stayed quiet? Would you appeal, argue, or let someone else's walls block your view? Drop a comment. Tell me where you're tuning in from. And if you've ever had to draw a line in the dirt and stand by it, share it. Because these stories don't just belong to one of us. They belong to everyone still learning how to keep what matters without losing who they are.